So here's some food for thought, since we're on the subject of Antifa and the bullshit they did yesterday or the day before or whenever it was, over the weekend. I wanted you to consider a concept, if you will. This concept is found in sociology. It's actually been studied quite well, and it started with things as simple, well, not really simple, but as profound, I guess you could say, as suicide. And what this system or finding is called is the Werther Effect. So everyone's familiar with the Streisand effect by now, I'm sure. Pretty much what happens is you say something as in, don't look at this thing is bad, you should not look at this thing. Everybody looks. The same kind of application can be found when you're driving down the street, for example, and there's a car accident on the side of the road. What's the first thing everyone does? Look. Why? Because there's disaster over there. It is actually impulse. It's nature that's driving us to look. We don't really have a choice in the matter in this weird, sick, demented sort of view, because we are a herd species. We're a communal animal, as it were. So if there's danger from one place, we all take a look to see if it's equally dangerous for us. It's an impulse reaction, if you will. Well, the Streisand effect kind of is the same application as that, but with things that people tell us we shouldn't do. So instead of us going and say, don't do this, don't look at that, the people are alt-right evil trolls, don't look at this, we're going to censor this video from Veritas, don't look at it. Shit like that. What happens is the exact opposite, and it gets high traffic, high visibility, high views. If you call people names and shit like that, trying to denounce somebody, the opposite effect is usually what you end up getting, because nobody seems to care when somebody's lying. They go to check it out for themselves. Well, the Werther Effect is similar to that, but it's a little bit more insidious. And what this effect is, I'll leave a link in the description to one specific instance that I'm talking about where it's applied to something bigger than suicide. But I'll get to that in a second. The Werther Effect is when you have a highly publicized suicide. And what happens is you get a bunch of copycat suicides thereafter. So think about, what's a high-profile suicide? David Carradine. A lot of the Kung Fu martial arts people would know this guy as the guy that was in Kung Fu, actually. He was the bald white dude that trained with the Shaolin monks, with the blind monk that said, take this pebble from my hand. That was David Carradine. He actually did study Tai Chi, so he knew a little bit of what he was doing, at least to perform it. Other than that, he was kind of a dipshit and mysticist. I didn't like him, obviously. But he did commit suicide. He died by asphyxiation while jerking off. So in other words, he choked himself to death while trying to get his rocks off.
Stop staring. I would look.
Now, there was a spew, no pun intended, of different suicides thereafter. Once he killed himself, there were several copycat, less profiled people that would kill themselves. And once he hit the big news, you would see the same suicides in the local news similar to his.
I am dumbfounded.
Pretty much anytime that you could see a mass or a high-profile suicide where somebody killed themselves in the media, in the news, and it was highly publicized and everybody knew about it, what you didn't see, and was less frequent to be seen because nobody reported on it because these people weren't high profile, was the copycat suicides thereafter. But there were indeed several copycat suicides that did the exact same kind of suicide as the person that killed themselves.
Oh, don't stop me! If you do, I will kill myself!
The similar studies have determined and kind of pontificated, if you will, that if it's true that suicides cause other people to copycat suicides, less publicized, if it will, could the same be said as other tragedies could be unfolded, that similar things would happen? So somebody decided to experiment with and guess that potentially what could also be happening is that
Next time, don't make a mistake.
mass shootings or mass incidents of violence could also be carried out in smaller effect, or at least attempted by copycats. And this seems to be the case. So, the Werther Effect is also known as contagion in mass killings and school shootings. This study was done in 2015. I'll leave a link in the description. It's actually open journal, so take it with a grain of salt. But the abstract basically is right here. Background, method, and conclusion. So I'll just read this real quick. Several past studies have found that media reports of suicides and homicides appear to subsequently increase the incidence of similar events in the community, apparently due to coverage planting the seeds of the ideation in the high at-risk individuals to commit similar acts. So just like I described. Here we explore whether or not contagion is evident in more high-profile incidents such as school shootings and mass killings, incidents with 4 or more people killed. We fit a contagion model to a recent datasets of such incidents in the US, with terms that take into account the fact that a school shooting or mass murder may temporarily increase the probability of similar events in the immediate future, by assuming an exponential decay in contagiousness after the event. So, the longer the event, the longer amount of time that goes by after the event occurs, decreases the likelihood of somebody repeating it. My God, that was horrible. I apologize. Apparently, I'm really tired. Conclusion: we did find significant evidence that mass killings involving firearms are incented, yes, by similar events in the immediate past. On average, this temporary increase on probability lasted 13 days, and each incident incites at least 0.3 new incidents. And then they give the P, that's their standard deviation of error. We also find significant evidence of contagion in school mass shootings where an incident is contagious for an average of 13 days. That is the Werther Effect. It's usually 2 weeks to 3 weeks after that you just see a rash of attempts or full-on suicides, in this case, mass shootings. The p-values are assessed based on likelihood ratio, comparing the likelihood of contagion model of a null model with no contagion. On average, mass killings involved firearms occur approximately every 2 weeks in the US, while school shootings occur an average monthly. We find that the stale prevalence of firearm ownership is significantly associated with the state incidence of mass killings with firearm shootings, blah, blah, blah. What they're trying to say here is, per state, the more access you have to guns, the more likelihood you're going to be able to find an incident with a mass killing with a firearm. This is true, because it's easier to use a gun than it is to use a knife or anything else. You're less likely to see a body count with a knife or other similar weapon than you would with a gun. It's why Antifa avoids states with fairly loose gun laws. For example, the Antifa, when they decided to do some shit in Dallas, one Antifa member decided to swing at one guy. The guy pulled out his gun and shot him in the stomach. Antifa man survived. There was a investigation. The person that shot Mr. Antifa guy was found to be in no wrongdoing. He was defending himself in accordance to the law because the man was swinging at him with a weapon in hand. So he returned in kind with the firearm. Needless to say, Antifa doesn't try that shit in Texas because you will get fucking shot. Something Oregon can probably learn by. I mean, yes, it's advocating for self-defense. when it comes to violence, but I don't see any other way around it. I think a gun is a good deterrent for these assholes at this point. If they swing and get shot, maybe they'll think twice before they decide to go doing it again. It seemed to have worked in other states, just saying. But I want to apply the Werther Effect to things like Oregon. How many repeats will we see of the same carnage in other states from members of Antifa that now have been emboldened that they beat the shit out of one of their figurehead targets? Andy Ngo was one of those targets, right? Do they now feel emboldened? Will we see, because this only happened a few days ago, right? It happened over the weekend. Will we see this weekend perhaps a escalation or a repeat in another state with fewer members from Antifa, maybe in California, for example, where they do and act out the same thing because there was another rally? Or maybe it's in Portland like they did last time, and it escalates and this time they lose. Where will this end up? Will it escalate? Well, data and evidence suggests that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll see a repeat. We'll see a copycat, if you will. It applies in mass shootings. It applies in mass suicides. It applies in individual suicides. Why would it not apply to mass assault? Granted, there's a little bit of a difference here. So you have a group tribal mentality that's attacking, and with the Werther Effect, it's usually individuals that repeat another individual's actions. For example, most people don't know this, but after the Christchurch shooting, where the guy just mowed over a bunch of Muslims, he was a white supremacist, and he thought that because he was attacked by all this anti-white bigotry that's pretty much everywhere at this point in time, that he'd do something about it. Ironically radicalized by the left. It's fairly amazing. I'm not surprised. But after him, within, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks, we had an attempted copycat in the US. He was thwarted by other people with guns. There was another attempt in I think it was Spain or France, one of those two places. Same thing. He was thwarted by actual, because all the cops were basically on high alert. They were watching for suspicious characters. It stopped before anything bad happened. However, in India, almost a full week and a half afterwards, it was retaliation in greater numbers. And it was an individual who decided to do a repeat, but ideologically driven, did it in the opposite direction. It was odd enough that the place was called Christchurch. That probably didn't help much in the retaliation that they targeted Hindu and Christians. Needless to say, this kind of violence is reciprocal and then it'll die down in a couple weeks. I wish it just didn't happen at all, to be honest. Its escalation just doesn't need to happen, but it will. So, I would like to conclude with letting you know that this stuff will reoccur. It's sociology. We're tribal, stupid beasts. It doesn't help that these people are fed a bunch of bullshit, that minorities are being kidnapped, of all things, and then tortured and gassed, probably, is what they think. I mean, you got AOC, who doesn't help the situation by saying that there's concentration camps at the border, and then she does this crazy-ass photo shoot. What do you think the people who think they're actually fighting Nazis will take with that information? They're going to believe what she said, that they're running concentration camps, and if they looked at history just a little bit, they're now thinking that the United States government is putting a bunch of fucking immigrants into camps and then gassing their asses. We're murdering people at the border, according to these people now, thanks to that rhetoric. That's where it builds up to. The Werther Effect is a scary fucking thing. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you found something insightful. Go ahead and look into the Werther Effect. It's kind of insidious, to say the least, and it's human nature. If anybody still thinks that evolutionary psychology is not a thing, and this kind of shit doesn't apply to us, think again. Your bullshit social construct stuff only applies to that shit that passes after evolutionary psychology has had its play, because our primitive brains will always be first. Sad to say, that's where our bias starts. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
There are things you can forget, and things you can't forget. I don't know what you mean. I won't forget what people have done for me. But when I'm kind to other people, I don't try to remember it.